To Season 4, Episode 4 of COMMCast. I'm your host, Jacob Holloway. COMMCast is a production of the Longwood University Communication Studies Department and the COM 434 CommLab class. This show is dedicated to highlighting the Longwood and Farmville communities. On today's episode, we'll learn more about Longwood University's theater department and their production of Little Shop of Horrors. That starts tonight. Let's get started. Joining us on set today is Professor R.J. Magee, Assistant Professor of Acting and Director of Longwood's upcoming production of Little Shop. Thank you for being with us today, Professor.
Thank you for having me.
Well, of course. Could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background in theater?
Well, I'm actually brand new to Longwood. I started here in August. I finished my MFA in May in Minnesota. And I was there for about 3 years doing my graduate work. And before then, I was in New York City and Philadelphia and kind of all over the country performing and casting and managing actors and kind of doing a bunch of stuff on both sides of the table. And I decided I wanted to get my terminal degree so I could kind of marry the industry and the educational academic side. And that brought me here.
Yeah. Awesome. So very well versed in many different positions in theater.
Well, I'd like to think so, but you know, that's up to anyone's interpretation.
Yeah. And then could you, for our viewers, give us a little bit of a summary or overview of what Little Shop is about for those that don't know or haven't seen the show?
Yeah, so it's a classic American musical by Alan Menken and Howard Ashman, who wrote The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin. And you'll hear some of those musical references throughout the score of Little Shop. But the musical itself is about a young man named Seymour Krelborn who works at a florist on Skid Row, and he's sort of a down on his luck kind of kid. And one day he discovers this really exotic, unique, strange plant and begins to kind of take care of it and raise it and grow it, and the plant sort of starts taking over everything. And all of a sudden, all of Seymour's dreams, hopes and dreams are coming true, but at what cost in terms of what the plant wants from him? Everything comes at a price in Little Shop of Horrors.
Oh, very nice. And then what, I guess, originally drew you guys to do Little Shop of Horrors, and what drew the department to select it and for you to direct it?
Well, that's a great question. Since I was new at Longwood and we were selecting titles last year, it was sort of challenging because I'd never been here before, so I wasn't that familiar with our talent pool, with the kind of resources that we had. I did see a production of Little Shop of Horrors over the summer at a professional theater, so it was nice to have a show that I had recently seen produced. But for some reason, it was a title that kind of just kept percolating in our minds as something that could be a big fit, a good fit. It's not a large cast. In fact, I've expanded it. We have about 12 student actors in the show, but you could do the show with probably as few as half a dozen. And I knew that it would give us a lot of opportunity for creativity in terms of the design and the aesthetic of the show, and that certainly it has.
Yeah, very nice. And then, so I guess you kind of talked on this with changing it to 12 members. So I guess what is Longwood's approach of Little Shop, and how does that look different from other performances or productions of Little Shop?
Well, I really wanted to re-examine the piece through the lens of today. It's often performed in a 1950s setting. So 1950s costumes. The score is, the music to Little Shop is sort of a 1950s, 60s pastiche. So you'll hear songs that sort of run the gamut of what 50s and 60s popular music and rock music sounds like. What was I going to say? So we wanted it to have a visual aesthetic that was not typical for Little Shop, that drew on more contemporary elements, but also sort of had this nebulous feeling of sort of being everywhere at once at the same time. So that is sort of what we drew upon. Also, and your viewers who are familiar with Little Shop have maybe seen the show done previously with the plant being represented by puppetry. And we found for a couple different reasons that wasn't going to be the right approach for us. One, to rent those puppets is thousands of dollars because they have to be shipped via freight. So I said, well, why don't we re-examine the visual representation of the plant in a whole new way? So the plant is a person. It's sort of a human plant abstract hybrid. It's almost like I use the reference Poison Ivy in the Batman comics and movies when Uma Thurman played that character. So the plant is being represented exclusively by a student, Natalie Masitis, and she's female identifying, which is also unusual for the plant. The plant is usually sung by a male identifying performer who's a bass baritone. And in our production, we have Natalie sing it up the octave in her own register on stage. Usually the voice of the plant is backstage, but everything we're doing in this show is on stage. So it's very exciting.
Awesome. Yeah, but we were going to ask about your approach to Audrey too, and you already answered it. So
yeah.
Awesome. And that's cool. You can mix it up and kind of give people that might have already seen the show a fresher viewing experience.
It's all about giving them something unexpected.
Yeah, yeah. And we were actually originally here to help promote the show, but it's sold out now. So congratulations on that.
Sold out.
Yeah, yeah. So how do you, I guess, feel about that? And then is there a waiting list for tickets or anything like that? And what is that process?
There is a waiting list that the general public, students, staff, faculty, community members can get themselves on. And I have been told that in the past they are able to get through the wait list a little bit. So you just come to the theater. The show starts at 7 o'clock and get your name on the wait list a little bit before we start and kind of test your luck. I do encourage people to try because I think it is going to be a possibility that we'll be able to get some people in. And but we did sell out, which is really exciting. And I attribute that to how popular of a musical this is. I also think that coming back from COVID, people are starting to sort of take notice of our campus events again, especially community members. And that's been one of my goals since I've been at Longwood, is to engage our community a little bit more in the shows that we're doing on campus, both the Longwood community and the Farmville community. And so I did that a little bit through social media, and I think that also caused the show to sell out quite quickly.
Awesome. So
it's very exciting.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you, Professor Magee, for letting us to get to know a little bit about your production of Little Shop. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back with COMMCast Trivia. All right, it is time for everyone's favorite segment, COMMCast Trivia, where we ask our guests a little bit about whatever they're interested in, and in this case, we'll be asking Professor Magee about Little Shop. So, Professor Magee, what came first, Little Shop of Horrors stage musical or the movie?
That is a really good question. I'm going to say the musical came first.
All right, and...
Wow.
Unfortunately, it is a movie. Wow, yeah, I would have guessed the
well,
same.
Okay, that's a trick question.
Oh.
Because there's the 1980s film as well that is an adaptation of the musical.
Okay.
So that is different from the original film from the 1960s that the musical is based on. I believe the 1960s film is not a musical.
Okay.
It doesn't use the same score that Menken and Ashman wrote.
Awesome. Well, there you go. You kind of did trivia for us there, so
well,
I appreciate that. And then, so how much does Seymour pay for Audrey 2?
Man, these are hard. I don't know. Is it free?
Let's see.
$1.95. $1.95. For $1.95. Man,
yeah.
This is kind of pathetic.
All right, and our last question. Well, and this is kind of a, could you finish the lyric? So, could you finish this lyric? I have tried you at levels of moisture from desert to mud.
I've given you grow lights and mineral supplements. What do you want from me, blood?
That is correct. Awesome. Well, again, thank you for joining us, Professor
you.
Magee, and great job at COMMCast. Thanks for everyone for watching CommLab, and thank you to everyone behind the scenes. Please make sure to go tune in to Little Shop playing all this weekend, Wednesday through Sunday, and please join us live next week at 1:30 p.m. on YouTube for another edition of CommCast. Thank you.